Now, I love cooking barramundi. There's so many different ways of cooking it, but today I'm going to be pan frying it so we get crispy skin and perfectly cooked flesh. I'm also going to be serving it with a really cool sauce made from sherry and cream. Now, I've just been sauteing off some onions in my pot. This has been going for about 10 minutes, so they've really softened. You don't want to get too much colour on the onions. What we're trying to do is extract the sweetness of the onions, which will pair nicely with the sherry wine. Now I'll add a little bit of tomato paste. This is going to give it a blushing colour. And when you're using tomato paste, you do want to cook it off slightly so we get the raw flavour out. At this stage, we can also add a bay leaf. And once that starts to bubble away, which it is now, we can deglaze this pan with the sherry. So about 150 millilitres of sherry. If you can get dry sherry, fantastic, use it. There are so many different varieties of sherry on the market. What I love about sherry is it's got that really nice woody, almost oak flavour, which goes quite nicely with cream. Now this is going to take about 5 to 6 minutes to reduce quite significantly, 2/3. In the meantime though, I can get our garnish ready, which is a combination of kaleettes and Brussels sprouts. If you've never heard of kaleettes, well, have a look. This is it here. It's a cross between a Brussels sprout and kale, and this is what you get, these beautiful little florets, so much flavour, and these are fantastic if you roast them in the oven or saute them in a pan with a little bit of water and butter, and that's what I'm going to do. So in a small pan, we'll put on a high heat. And by sauteing them in the pan and not blanching them in water, what happens is we're going to retain all of its flavour, so none of it will be washed away in the water. So it's a nice little technique to learn. And kale and Brussels sprouts take a bit of time to cook, so that's why I'm adding them now before we cook the fish, because the fish doesn't take long at all to cook. All right, butter in the pan, just a few knobs of butter. And to ensure that butter doesn't burn, I'll add a hint of olive oil. So once that starts to bubble away, we can add a big handful of the kaleettes, and then at the same time we can add these baby Brussels sprouts. I've cut them in half so they cook in the same amount of time as the kaleette, so another big handful. I'm just doing enough for one portion, so you'll need a bit more if you're cooking 4 fillets of fish. Toss them in that butter just so they're all coated, a little pinch of salt, and then when it starts to bubble again, we'll add a little bit of water. So this is going to help these just steam a bit. So just the smallest amount, we'll give it a helping hand. Lid goes on and just allow them to cook away. So that's going to take about 6 to 8 minutes to cook. Now this reduction is looking good. It's thick, it's reduced. Now it's time to add our cooking cream. Now this cooking cream can be boiled so it won't split, and that's fantastic, especially when you're working with alcohol like the sherry. I'll add at least half of this container. Give it a stir. Have a taste of it for seasoning. I'm going to do that now. Oh, that sherry is so good. I'll add a bit of salt though. It does need some seasoning. Now let that come back to the boil and then turn it down a little bit and just gently simmer it for about 3 minutes so all those flavours can mingle, and then the sauce is ready to go. You can turn it off and just let it sit there until the fish is cooked. Speaking of fish, let's get the fish on. My choice of fish is barramundi. I love our Aussie barramundi. You know it's barramundi when you look at these big scale-like patterns on the skin. This has been scaled, of course, and the bones have been taken out. Key thing here, though, is to get the skin on so it goes crispy in the pan. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil on both sides. When I'm cooking the fish in a pan, I always like to season it and oil it on the plate first and then put in the pan. You don't want to put too much oil. So a bit of salt on the flesh, and then we'll turn it over, and most importantly on the skin so it does go crispy. A little bit of pepper, just freshly cracked pepper. Now these fillets are about 180, 190 grams, which is a perfect portion per person. Skin goes down, and just press down on it a little bit just so it flattens and it doesn't curl over. And with fish, you always cook it the majority of the time on the skin side, and we'll see that it changes colour. It'll go from this opaque colour to white. When it's almost all white, we'll turn it over and then we'll cook for a further minute. This fish fish is cooked, so it's time to plate up. Look at the kaleette and the Brussels sprouts. They look fantastic and it smells so good with that little bit of butter. I'm going to place a nice, generous amount of these onto a plate. And now I like to always serve the sauce underneath the fish, especially if you're serving crispy skin fish. So I'll get this sauce. You see how much it's reduced. If you want to make this a more elegant dish, what you could do is strain this sauce, but I don't mind the little pieces of onion in this. You can see I'm a big sauce fan when you add that much sauce. And then I'll get a piece of the fish and then just nestle it on the sauce. That is a really stunning dish. You know what, that doesn't take long to cook. By the time you cook the kaleette, that takes 6 to 8 minutes. Sauce takes 6 to 8 minutes, and the fish doesn't take long at all either. That's my barramundi with a cream and sherry sauce.